Hello and welcome. This is my first presentation on the couple of essays written by Joseph Addison. The first essay is Sir Roger at Home and the second is Sir Roger at Church. Joseph Addison is a new writer, as far as our undergraduate course is concerned. Joseph Addison, you must have read about him in the first semester in the History of English Literature paper. Joseph Addison and Richard Steele, these are the two names which are often associated with the pioneering enterprises of essay writing in Britain. Joseph Addison was born in late 17th century and he died in early 18th century. And in early 18th century, despite having had held many positions, government positions, he was a literary man. He had some great literary talent, and he decided to collaborate with Richard Steele, who already had published the magazine The Tatler. And then in collaboration with Steele, Joseph Addison published one more journal or magazine, that is The Spectator. So after the discontinuation of The Tatler, came out The Spectator, and it was very popular. Every day they published one article, and in Spectator most of the essays were written by Joseph Addison. But it was a brilliant effort. It discontinued after a couple of years. From that journal, The Spectator, we have got two essays, Sir Roger at Home and Sir Roger at Church, which are part of our syllabus. Now, Joseph Addison was writing his essays in the early 18th century when English literature in Britain was undergoing extensive changes. The changes first started from the restoration of monarchy in 1660 and the Glorious Revolution 1688. And literature was changing, moving forward, or moving, it was undergoing some kind of digression from the Tudor Elizabethan style to a much more prosaic style, which is a hallmark of 18th century literature. Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, and many names which are successful names in literature, in satire writing, in poetry. But early 18th century is also known for the considerable development of English essays in Britain. Now, essays were successful even at the hands of Francis Bacon, but this 18th century, the late 17th or early 18th century essays were absolutely different. They were part of the periodicals or magazines, and periodicals or magazines published their essays not in one volume, but they published these essays every day. Spectator, as I have said, that Spectator was the magazine in which Joseph Addison published his essays. Joseph Addison was a man of great positions. He held positions, very important positions, and he demonstrated his talent in many walks of life. But he had a great hand in literature, and that is quite manifest in his essays. So Roger at Home and Roger at Church, these two essays have been picked out from a group of essays which we often call the Coverley essays. Roger de Coverley's name, and this is a fictitious character. Sir Roger's character is a fictitious character, is an imaginary character. He is a country squire. He's a member of the landed gentry, and as 18th century, we often know 18th century was growing. The time the society was very much growing and sprawling in towns and in urban cultures. But such a person had his rural establishment in the country, and how he behaved in the country, how he maintained his farm, his manor, his family, his servants, and how he had gained a reputation in his estate. All these things are quite vivid through the pen of Joseph Addison and through the character Sir Roger. There are many essays. Now, these two essays are quite interesting reading when we go through them. The first, I have the text with me right before myself, and you can follow the lines while I try to read it out and explain a thing or two. Sir Roger at Home. In this essay we see how the author, that is Joseph Addison, is invited to the estate of Sir Roger, and there Joseph Addison he comes to know his army of soldiers, army of servants and other household people, and he also he sees the church in the next essay. And Joseph Addison very correctly, and very very dexterously has penned them all down, and that is how he has made these essays. These essays don't seem to be essays; they seem to be a kind of a story, and this Sir Roger's character is very lively. Now, if I can start the essay, Sir Roger at Home. Having often received an invitation from my friend Sir Roger de Coverley to pass away a month with him in the country, I last week accompanied him thither, and am settled with him for some time at his country house, where I intend to form several of my ensuing speculations. Now, what are those speculations? The speculations are nothing but his anticipations, the author's anticipations about the rural life, about the gentry life. And as I have said, he was invited by Sir Roger to his lodgings, to his estate, and there he starts his essay. I intend to form several of my ensuing speculations. Sir Roger, who is very well acquainted with my humour, lets me rise and go to bed when I please, dine at his own table, or in my chamber as I think fit, sit still and say nothing without bidding me may. So he is completely, the author is completely at his convenience. He has been allowed full freedom by Sir Roger de Coverley, and he has also been allowed absolute freedom and convenience by Sir Roger's servants. When the gentleman, now here the point is that when you stay at such a country house, a house of a landlord or some landed gentry, then there are certain rules, some certain decorum that you follow, and you forget who you are, and rather you try to follow their customs and traditions. But here it doesn't happen with the author. The author is very much at his ease, and he is very much home when he sees that he is extended full cooperation and warmth from the owner of the house as well as his servants. When the gentlemen of the country come to see him, he only shows me at a distance. As I have been walking in his fields, I have observed them stealing a sight of me over an hedge, and have heard the knight desiring them not to let me see them, for that I hated to be stared at. Now, when the visitors came along, and when they paid a visit to Sir Roger, Sir Roger also made it sure that the visitors don't see the guest. And similarly, when the guest, that is the author himself, he strolled and he roamed around the country, he found that there were gazes, secret gazes, which were staring at him, and they were trying to just make out who this fellow is and where from he has made his appearance. So it's quite intriguing and very humorous. For this is the humorous style. Joseph Addison is also known for his great subtle humor, and this is the humor that it is very much relevant even today when you go from when a city man pays a visit to the country folk. The country folk are really very almost very inquisitive, and that is exactly what was happening even in the early 18th century. I am the more at ease in Sir Roger's family because it consists of sober and staid persons, for the knight is the best master in the world. He seldom changes his servants, and as he is beloved by all about him, his servants never care for leaving him. So the servants also love him equally, and Sir Roger also makes sure that every servant is very happy in his position. And most of the people are staid. Staid is STAID. Staid means sober. Sometimes it means old-fashioned or old custom, etc. Sometimes morose, etc. That is the meaning of staid. So he seldom changes his servants, and as it happens that in the old houses they seldom change their servants, because they rely so largely upon their servants, so they don't think about changing their servants. And he is beloved by all about him. His servants never care for leaving him. By this means his domestics are all in years and grown old with their masters. It is very common in any old house that the servants are often found very old, because they are employed in the household very early in their life, and they serve till a very late age in their life. So they grow with the master, they age with the master. You take his valet de chamber for his brother. His butler is grey-headed. His groom is one of the gravest men that I have ever seen, and his coachman has the looks of a privy councillor. So all these names are different positions. They are different servants, entitled with different jobs. And most of the jobs, as the author has already mentioned, most of the servants are already are very staid, very solemn looking, and very grave looking, sometimes very serious looking, and they are very well treated. The servants are, you can mistake one or two servants for Sir Roger's brother, because Sir Roger is so warm and so so caring, so soliciting, that the servants hardly look servants. They rather look Sir Roger's kith and kin. You see the goodness of the master even in the old house dog, and in a grey pad that is kept in the stable with great care and tenderness, out of the regard to his past services, though he has been useless for several years. And the animals, it is also found that Sir Roger is so affectionate. He is not cruel. It has been a very dirty and very inhuman custom of mankind, that whenever they found their animals useless, they killed them, they sold them. But under the care of Sir Roger, the animals are well fed and they are looked after. So this is another good dimension, very positive and bright dimension of Sir Roger. I could not but observe, I could not but observe with a great deal of pleasure the joy that appeared in the countenances of these ancient domestics upon my friend's arrival at his country seat. So when Sir Roger appeared there, the entire household was so delighted, so ecstatic. I do not know whether Addison is just, he's just making an encomium, or he's weaving some panegyric, or it is really true. But as far as he says, if I can take his words, to be true, then it is a strange fact, because sometimes these servants don't like their master. But in this case, all the servants are so jubilant, they're so ecstatic the moment they find their master, Sir Roger. Some of them could not refrain from tears at the sight of their old master. Even one of them pressed forward to do something for him, and seemed discouraged if they were not employed. And if they were not employed, then they naturally felt really bad. At the same time, the good old knight, with a mixture of the father and the master of the family, tempered the inquiries after his own affair with several kind questions relating to themselves. Now they came down with an avalanche of questions, inquiries, etc., and he patiently was answering to all his servants. This humanity and good nature engages everybody to him, so that when he is pleasant upon any of them, all his family are in good humor, and none so much as the person whom he diverts himself with. On the contrary, if he coughs or betrays any infirmity of old age, it is easy for a stander-by to observe a secret concern in the looks of all his servants. So servants are also very much inquisitive. They want to know whether their master is in good health and good spirits. My worthy friend has put me under the particular care of his butler, who is a very prudent man, and as well as the rest of his fellow servants, wonderfully desirous of pleasing me, because they have often heard their master talk of me as of his particular friend. Now it only seems that the master, Sir Roger de Coverley, has said very extensively about his friend, that is Joseph Addison, and he always praised him, Joseph Addison, in front of the servants. So therefore servants have also got a very good and clean image of this man, author, and whenever the author is taken care of, he is looked after, he is served by the servants. The servants do their duties spontaneously from the bottom of their heart. My chief companion, when Sir Roger is diverting himself in the woods or the fields, is a very venerable man, who is ever with Sir Roger and has lived at his house in the nature of a chaplain above 30 years. So he is a close man of Sir Roger, and who also who is also at the service of the author, and who is in the household, has been in the household for over 30 years. This gentleman is a person of good sense and some learning, of a very regular life and obliging conversation. He heartily loves Sir Roger, and knows that he is very much in the old knight's esteem. And this old man, who has been in the service for over 3 decades, loves his master, and he knows that his master also loves him very much, so that he lives in the family rather as a relation than as a dependent. So it has already been said by the author Joseph Addison that servants are often mistaken as brothers, and this old man is not an exception. He has been being treated as a relation of Sir Roger. I have observed in several of my papers that my friend Sir Roger, amidst all his good qualities, is something of a humorist, and that his virtues as well as imperfections are, as it were, tinged by certain extravagance, which makes them particularly his and distinguishes them from those of other men. Now here the author says that Sir Roger has got some humors, some peculiar natures. Every man has got such traits in his or her personality, and therefore same way Sir Roger has got also some humors, that is some shades of his character. The cast of mind, as it is generally very innocent in itself, so it renders his conversation highly agreeable. So when he converses, when he talks in a very agreeable way. People like him, and more delightful than the same degree of sense and virtue would appear in their common and ordinary colors, and also when otherwise also his conversations are, his words are taken not only seriously but taken in high esteem. As I was walking with him last night, he asked me how I liked the good old man whom I have just now mentioned, and without staying for my answer told me that he was afraid of being insulted with Latin and Greek at his own table, for which reason he desired a particular friend of his at the university to find him out a clergyman rather of a plain sense than much learning, of a good aspect, of clear voice, a sociable temper, and if possible a man that understood a little backgammon. Now the author says that this old man, he has been praising this old man, and this old man is literate but not so literate, so he needed a friend in the household who can understand this old man, this old servant, and who knows little bit of backgammon. Backgammon is a kind of a play, it's an indoor game. My friend, that is, says Sir Roger, found me out this gentleman, who besides the endowments required of him is, they tell me, a good scholar, though he does not show it. So even the person is a learned person, but he doesn't show his scholarship often. I have given him the personage of the parish, and because I know his value, I have settled upon him a good annuity for life. If he outlives me, he shall find that he was higher in my esteem than perhaps he thinks he is. He has now been with me 30 years, and though he does not know I have taken notice of it, has never in all that time asked anything of me for himself, though he is every day soliciting me for something in behalf of one or the other of my tenants, his parishioners. Now this fellow has also been given some other duties of that parish, and Sir Roger says that if in the event of his death, this old servant is entitled to some annuity, some pension, and only then he will understand that the magnanimity of Sir Roger. Sir Roger is kinder than he is often thought to be. There has not been a lawsuit in the parish since he has lived among them. If any dispute arises, they apply themselves to him for the decision. If they do not acquiesce in his judgment, which I think never happened above once or twice at most, they appeal to me. So this fellow is also of great judgment, and whenever there is a dispute, there are very few, they appeal to him, and he is very wise and very impartial to draw a conclusion to any case. And even if they are not satisfied, that is the tenants, then they are fully entitled to appeal to me, that is Sir Roger de Coverley. At his first settling with me, I made him a present of all good sermons which have been printed in English, and only begged of him that every Sunday he would pronounce one of them in the pulpit. Accordingly, he has digested them into such a series that they follow one another naturally and make a continued system of practical divinity. So this fellow also he is also a preacher. He preaches from the pulpit, but Sir Roger de Coverley has given him some books from which he has instructed him to choose his sermons and not to devise his own. As Sir Roger was going on in his story, the gentleman we were talking of came up to us, and upon the knight's asking him who preached tomorrow, for it was Sunday night, told us the Bishop of Asaph in the morning and Dr. South in the afternoon. So Sir Roger inquired about who was going to preach next, and then the servant said that yes, these are the two names, Asaph and Dr. South. He then showed us his list of preachers for the whole year, where I saw with great deal of pleasure Archbishop Tillotson, Bishop Saunderson, Dr. Barrow, Calamy, with several living authors who have published discourses of practical divinity. Now these names are not fictitious, these names are real names. They were the preachers, they were scholarly people of the church. They knew the language, that is Latin, they knew the scriptures. So fine, this old gentleman, that is a servant, he has already prepared a long list of preachers who would be delivering their sermons at the local church, parish church, and it's quite fine, and he is showing the list to Sir Roger. I no sooner saw this venerable man in the pulpit, but I very much approved of my friends insisting upon the qualifications of a good aspect and a clear voice. For I was so charmed with the gracefulness of his figure and delivery, as well as the discourses he pronounced, that I think I never passed any time more to my satisfaction. Now, when the author saw him at the pulpit, he also was convinced that he has been a very good choice by Sir Roger, because he has that disposition, he has that character, and he has of course a very clear voice, which have been always insisted upon by Sir Roger. A sermon repeated after this manner is like the composition of a poet in the mouth of the graceful actor. Now, anybody cannot be a preacher. A preacher is somebody who really believes in what he is preaching. And secondly, the clear voice is also required for somebody, even at those days in 18th century when there were no loudspeakers. So you are required to reach out to the last row of the listeners and the devotees, and these qualities were present in that person. I could heartily wish that more of country clergy could follow this example, and instead of wasting their spirits in laborious compositions of their own, would endeavor after a handsome elocution and all those other talents that are proper to enforce what has been penned by greater masters. This would not only be more easy of themselves but more edifying to the people. Now, in conclusion, the author Joseph Addison says that he wishes that other preachers also follow this rule, this thumb rule, and that is taking sermons from other great preachers and not to devise their own sermons. That is of no use. That is how he ends his essay, Joseph Addison. And in the entire essay, Sir Roger at Home, when Sir Roger is at his seat, that is the seat, and he is looking after his estate, his tenants, etc. There is a beautiful, clear description of Sir Roger, especially of his servants, and the one servant in particular who has been in this service for over 30 years and who is also a preacher. So all these things, all these pictures are very much clearly drawn by the author in this essay. So from this essay, if we read this essay thoroughly, we can draw the character of Sir Roger and his household as far as his servants are concerned, and the author's special fascination for Sir Roger and Sir Roger's fascination for the author. And it is proved that Sir Roger is a magnanimous man. He is a large-hearted man, he is a kind man, and he is liked by his own servants, which is a rarity. Therefore, when we will go on reading more and more essays, if we can, then this character of Sir Roger will manifest even more. In one essay, Joseph Addison describes the death of Sir Roger, which is a painful event to him. But otherwise, Sir Roger has been painted in a good color, in a very bright color, and even in the university questions we can expect a question asking you to draw the character of Sir Roger and to draw a picture of Sir Roger's household and his servants. And as far as the style is concerned, we can clearly see that Joseph Addison has the tendency to paint the pictures of individuals very clearly and very convincing. So he has his knack for the details is there, which is a prerequisite for any author, any successful writer. And secondly, his irony. If you have seen the irony, one or two sentences or very few sentences where he used this equipment, the tool of irony, very subtly, without harming anybody. His irony or his satire is not very evident or very acidic, but it is subtle, it is gentle, but still he leaves his he says what he wants to say through the satire. This is his own brand of satire, and satire was one of the important ingredients, one of the hallmarks, you can say, of 18th century literature, be it an essay or be it a poem. So that's all for today. I hope you will read this essay on your own, and if you have questions, you can communicate with me. I have left my number and my mail ID. And in my next appearance, I will read the next essay, which is part of our syllabus, that is Sir Roger at Church, and we will see how Sir Roger, the country church, the parish church, this is a new experience, of course. So it is not just for the sake of examinations, even for the experience of some history, because these are documents of history. We in the 21st century are reading something about the early 18th century, and how do you think you can learn these things? You can learn from the great authors who have left their records in their essays and their novels. So these are wonderful read, no doubt. So thanks for your time and thanks for your patience. Bye bye.